Love beyond life. Introduction. Have you ever wondered why some people enter your life and cause such an overwhelming impact that you simply can't explain it with logic? Why, out of all the billions of human beings on this planet, do you feel that inexplicable connection with someone specific? Let me tell you a truth that goes against everything you've been taught about love. The story does unbegin when you meet for the first time in this life. In fact, it may have started centuries ago, in dimensions you don't even imagine exist. While most people believe that love ends when the body dies, I'm going to show you exactly the opposite. That true love, the kind that transcends all barriers, actually begins precisely where everyone thinks everything ends. It's in the spiritual plane, far from curious eyes and physical limitations, that the most powerful connections are forged. And if you're reading this now, it's no coincidence. Something inside you already knows there's much more than what your eyes can see. Have you ever felt that inexplicable emptiness, even when surrounded by people? Have you ever had the sensation that you're looking for someone without knowing exactly who? Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and had the strange certainty that you already knew them from somewhere? Well, get ready, because what you're about to discover in the next lines will completely change your way of seeing relationships, connections, and especially the true meaning of the word love. Because contrary to what Hollywood sold you, love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about recognizing a soul with whom you've already danced this dance in other lives, in other dimensions, in other times. And when this recognition happens, my friend, nothing is ever the same again. Literally, true love, you know that feeling that there's something greater than simply living, working, and following routine. Well, there are people who spend their entire lives seeking answers to questions that seem endless. And one of those questions that crosses generations, cultures, and even dimensions is, does true love really exist, or is it just an illusion we create to endure loneliness? The truth, my dear reader, is that love goes far beyond what we can see here on earth. When we talk about literally true love, we're not talking about that movie romance where everything is perfect and without conflicts. We're talking about a connection that transcends the physical body, that surpasses the barriers of time and space. It's as if two energies recognize each other from always, even without ever having seen each other before in this life. Have you ever stopped to think why some people enter your life and cause such a profound impact that you simply can't explain? It's not a sixth sense. It's not coincidence. It's soul memory. It's something that comes from much further than we imagine. Something that was built in other dimensions, in other times. And the most fascinating thing about all this is that many of these stories begin precisely where we think everything ends, in the spiritual plane. What few know is that love doesn't die when the physical body ceases to exist. In fact, it's precisely in the spiritual plane that many stories of true love begin to be written. Imagine a place where there are no lies, no social masks, no pretense. A place where you are exactly who you are, with all your virtues and flaws, without needing to hide anything. It's in this environment of absolute transparency that two souls can meet and realize that there's a real, genuine, deep affinity. It's not physical attraction. It's not financial interest. It's not social status. It's pure energetic identification. It's as if two musical instruments finally found the same tone, the same frequency, and from there created a unique melody. And here's what's interesting. Many of these couples who fall in love in heaven had never met before in any previous incarnation. Sounds crazy, right? How is it possible for two souls to go through so many lives, so many learnings, and only now meet? But that's exactly what makes this connection so powerful. When it finally happens, it's as if all the pieces of a giant puzzle finally fit together perfectly. Now, you might be wondering, but if they fall in love up there, why do they need to come back to Earth? My friend, this is one of the most important lessons we need to understand. The spiritual plane is like a theoretical school. You learn, study, understand concepts, but it's here on Earth, in the midst of chaos, difficulties, and challenges, that we really put to the test everything we've learned. It's like studying for a driver's license. You can know all the traffic rules by heart, but only when you get in the car and enter real traffic do you discover if you really learned. With love, it's the same thing. Up there in the spiritual plane, you might think you've already overcome jealousy, that you've already worked on the issue of possession, that you've already evolved spiritually. But it's here, when you incarnate and actually relate, that these issues come to the surface. It's here that you discover if that love is really mature or if there's still much to work on. And you know what's most impressive about these stories of premonition, history, and impressive reports? It's that when two spirits fall in love in heaven and decide to come down together to Earth, they go through an intense preparation process, building something called electromagnetic affinity. This electromagnetic affinity works like a kind of GPS of the soul. Even if these two spirits incarnate in different cities, in completely different families, with no apparent connection, there's something inside them that pulls, that attracts, that makes them unconsciously seek each other. That's why when they finally meet here on Earth, the impact is so strong. Many report that it wasn't love at first sight in the romantic sense of the word, but rather a deep recognition, a feeling of, I know you from somewhere. It's that inexplicable desire to be near the person, to talk, to spend time together, even without quite understanding why. Some even avoid thinking about dating at first, afraid of ruining that special connection they're feeling. Because deep down in the unconscious, they know that this is much bigger than a simple relationship. It's a reunion that was programmed a long time ago. And when I say programmed, I'm not talking about destiny in the sense that you have no choice. I'm talking about careful planning, where every detail was thought out so that meeting would happen in the best possible way. It's fascinating to realize how there are forces working behind the scenes of our lives, preparing meetings, creating opportunities, opening paths, but not everything is roses in this whole story, and it's important to make this very clear. Just as there are cases of absolute success where the couple meets, recognizes each other, and lives a beautiful story of love and companionship, there are also those cases where things don't go as planned. Imagine the frustration of preparing for decades in the spiritual plane, building an entire energetic affinity, planning every detail of the incarnation, and when you finally come down to earth, you can't find the person. Or worse, you find them, but don't recognize them. This happens, and it happens more than we imagine. There are people who spend their entire lives with that feeling that something is missing, that there's someone out there who should be by their side, but they can't identify who it is. This feeling isn't nonsense. It's not neediness. It's us, the soul, missing a connection that was programmed but didn't materialize. And you know what causes these mismatches? Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's attachment to old patterns, sometimes it's simply because the person isn't ready to receive that love. That's why personal life transformation is so important. The more we work on our interior, the more we free ourselves from limiting beliefs and irrational fears. The more prepared we become to recognize and live these deep connections when they appear in front of us. Soul compatibility couples. Now that you've understood that true love can begin in the spiritual plane, let's dive into an even deeper subject. Soul compatibility, because you see, it's not enough for two people to meet and feel a strong attraction. There needs to be real harmony, a connection that goes beyond the superficial. And when we talk about souls, this compatibility gains dimensions we can't even imagine here on Earth. You know that story that opposites attract? Well, in the spiritual plane, this works quite differently. What really matters is energetic attunement. It's as if it were an orchestra where each instrument needs to be in the right key for the music to sound harmonious. It's no use having a wonderful violin and an exceptional piano if they can't play at the same frequency. The same thing happens with souls. Two people can be incredible individually, but if there isn't this deep compatibility, the relationship simply doesn't flow. And what's most interesting is that this compatibility isn't built overnight. It's worked on, developed, refined through many experiences, both in the spiritual plane and here on Earth. It's a maturing process where both learn to dance to the same rhythm, to respect each other's space, to grow together without losing individuality. What makes a couple truly compatible isn't the absence of conflicts, but rather how they deal with differences. In the spiritual plane, this issue becomes even more evident. When two spirits who love each other begin to have disagreements up there, they themselves quickly realize that something isn't right. There is none of that silly pride of I, whoa, and apologize first, or I LCL throw a tantrum until the person gives in. Their transparency is total. And when a disagreement arises, both immediately recognize that they need to work on that issue or, in some cases, temporarily separate to evolve individually. It's as if there were an automatic awareness that fights and arguments are reflections of unresolved internal issues, of negative influences we still carry from earthly experiences. That's why many spirits, when they realize they're entering into conflict in the spiritual plane, voluntarily choose to separate, not out of lack of love, but out of maturity. They understand that each needs to work on their own issues before being able to live a healthy union. And look how fascinating. This shows a level of love so elevated that we can barely comprehend it down here, where many times people prefer to stay together even when unhappy just so they won't be alone. But there is a specific type of compatibility that deserves special attention. The one that manifests through realistic dreams. Many people don't know this, but in the spiritual plane, especially the more evolved souls, also dream. And these dreams function as a kind of test, a way to evaluate if that couple is really ready for new experiences together. Imagine that you're there, preparing to no longer return to Earth because you've already completed your learning cycle here. You've gone through dozens, maybe hundreds of incarnations, learned everything you needed to learn, and now you're in that final stage of preparation. And suddenly, you meet someone who's also at the same evolutionary level as you, someone with whom you feel an inexplicable connection. You start working together, developing tasks jointly, and realize there's incredible compatibility. But then the question arises, is this compatibility real, or just a momentary illusion? This is when dreams come into action. During sleep in the spiritual plane, these souls experience situations, challenges, diverse scenarios that test the strength of that union. And based on these dreams, they can evaluate if they're really ready to move forward together or if they still need to mature separately. Now comes a part that will surprise you. Compatibility doesn't always manifest right away. There are fascinating cases of couples who fell in love in the spiritual plane, came down together to Earth for the first time as a couple, and simply couldn't find each other. That's right. All that planning, all that preparation, and when the moment came, it didn't work out. They returned to the spiritual plane frustrated, met again up there, resumed their feelings, and decided to try again. On the second attempt, they managed to find each other and lived a beautiful story together. Later, in a third incarnation, they met again and had an even deeper and more mature relationship. But here's the important detail. Each attempt, each experience, whether success or failure, builds and strengthens this compatibility. It's as if each life together were one more layer of understanding, of complicity, of true love. That's why some couples here on Earth have that feeling that they've known each other for a long time, even having met recently. It's because there's a history, there's a baggage of shared experiences in other dimensions that, even though not consciously remembered, remains recorded in the essence of the soul. These prophecies that materialize in the meeting between two people aren't mere chance. They read the fruit of much work and dedication throughout many existences. But what about when compatibility runs into issues of spiritual evolution? This is a delicate situation that happens more frequently than we imagine. Imagine a couple who love each other deeply, but one is more spiritually evolved than the other. One is ready to move on to higher dimensions, while the other still needs more experiences here on Earth. What happens in these cases? Well, free will always prevails. The one who is more evolved can choose to wait, can choose to accompany their partner in new incarnations, even though they no longer need them for themselves, or can choose to move forward in their evolutionary process. And you know what's most beautiful about all this? There's no right or wrong. There's only choice, maturity, and love. Some choose to wait because they feel that partnership is too important to be left behind. Others move forward but continue helping their partner in other ways as spiritual mentors. The important thing here is to understand that true soul compatibility isn't the kind that imprisons, that suffocates, that prevents growth. It's the kind that liberates, that encourages evolution, that respects each person's time and path. And when a couple manages to reach this level of maturity, where both love each other but also respect each other enough to let the other grow, then we're really talking about compatibility that transcends all dimensions and that prepares the ground for something even greater that we'll explore ahead. It's programmed lives. Now, get ready, because we're going to enter a territory that will completely expand your way of seeing life. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe nothing that happens to you is really by chance? That casual meeting in the coffee line, that opportunity that appeared out of nowhere, or even that difficulty that seemed impossible to overcome, are actually part of a much bigger plan. Well, my dear reader, when we talk about programmed lives, we're talking about something that goes far beyond destiny or luck. We're talking about meticulous, careful, detailed planning that can take decades in the earthly calendar just to be organized. Imagine yourself sitting at a meeting table with your spiritual mentors, analyzing every aspect of your next life, where you'll be born, who your parents will be, what challenges you'll face, what learnings you need to achieve, and especially with whom you'll share this journey. Sounds like science fiction, right? But this is exactly how it works in the spiritual plane, when a soul decides to return to Earth consciously and in a planned way. And the most fascinating thing about all this is that these programmings are undone haphazardly. They require spiritual maturity both from those descending and from those receiving. Let's be very practical here so you understand the dimension of what we're talking about. When two spirits fall in love in the spiritual plane and decide to come down together to live an experience as a couple on Earth, they don't simply parachute in thinking everything will work out. It doesn't work like that. They need to first find two families that are willing to receive them. Families that also need to have a certain level of spiritual maturity. Because think with me, if you're going to program an entire life with someone, you need to ensure that minimum conditions will be present, right? This includes choosing parents who have compatible values, who live in regions where this meeting can happen, who have the emotional conditions to raise these spirits in a healthy way. And look how interesting. All this programming can take 30 to 50 years in our earthly calendar just to be organized. 50 years. That's right, while down here we're racing against time, thinking everything needs to happen fast. Up there, the planning is done with a calm and precision we can't even comprehend. And you know why? Because a programmed incarnation is no joke. It involves not only the two who are descending, but also the children who will be born from this union, the friends who will be part of this story, the people who will cross their path. But here comes a question that must be hammering in your head. If all this is so well planned, why does it sometimes go wrong? Why are there cases of people who programmed to come down together and simply do unmeet here on Earth? My friend, this is one of the hardest lessons about free will and spiritual responsibility. You see, a programming can be perfect up there, but when we come down and assume a physical body, we temporarily lose conscious memory of everything that was planned. We don't remember the commitments we made, the people we promised to meet, the learnings we proposed to achieve. And this is precisely where the big test comes in. That's why realistic dreams are so important. Many times, through dreams, we receive clues, signs, intuitions about the path we should be following. That sixth sense that makes you turn on a different street than usual and meet someone special. That strange sensation that makes you accept an invitation you would normally refuse. All of this are manifestations of the original plan trying to materialize, even with all the obstacles that earthly life presents. But free will remains sovereign. You can receive all the signs in the world and still choose to ignore them out of fear, out of attachment to old patterns, out of insecurity. There are cases that are heartbreaking. Imagine a couple who prepared 4 years in the spiritual plane, built an entire energetic affinity, planned every detail of the life they would have together. The time came to descend, and one of them simply gives up at the last minute. Gives up out of fear because something unexpected happened with the parents who had been chosen because they thought they couldn't handle the challenge. And the other one, who already descended, trusting that their partner would come next, is down here without understanding what's happening. They don't have conscious memory of the programming, but feel deep down that something is missing, that there's someone who should be by their side. And worse, they promised not only to be with that person, but also to give life to children who were waiting to be born through them. So you see that when someone gives up on fulfilling a programming, it doesn't affect only the two people involved. It affects an entire network of souls that were connected to that planning. It's like removing a piece from a carefully assembled domino. And then what happens? Up in the spiritual plane, The mentors work frantically to reorganize everything, to find alternatives, to minimize the damage. But some things simply can't be redone in the same way. And this generates what we call incarnational deviation, when life takes a completely different course from what had been programmed. And you know what's most impressive about all these stories of programmed lives? It's discovering that many of the difficulties we face here on Earth, many of the situations that seem unfair or senseless, are actually part of the original planning, that period of loneliness you experienced. Maybe it was necessary for you to develop your emotional independence. That job you lost, it may have been to put you on the path to a much greater opportunity. That relationship that didn't work out, it was probably an experience programmed precisely to teach you what you don't want to repeat. Not everything we program up there is about easy happiness and life without obstacles. Quite the contrary, we program challenges, we program difficulties, we program situations that will take us out of our comfort zone, because that's how we grow, that's how we evolve. A soul that programs to descend to a life of extreme ease, without any challenge, without any difficulty, is generally a soul that's still very spiritually immature. The more evolved souls, those who really want to grow, program challenging lives, lives that will test them to their limits, because they know that it's there in the pressure, in the chaos, in the difficulty that true life transformation happens. And when a couple programs to descend together, they're aware that they'll face storms, that they'll go through difficult moments, but trust that together they'll have enough strength to overcome everything and in the process further strengthen that union that began up in the stars. Conclusion. So, after everything you just discovered, how do you feel? Could it be that that person who crossed your path and deeply marked you was just coincidence? Could it be that that relationship that didn't work out was really a failure, or was it exactly the experience your soul needed to live to evolve? Think with me. How many times have you ignored that sixth sense, that strong intuition that pulled you in a certain direction just because your rational mind couldn't explain it? How many opportunities for significant meetings may you have let pass simply out of fear, out of attachment to old patterns, for believing that that's not how things work? The big question here isn't just absorbing this knowledge as another interesting piece of information. It's about applying this awareness in your life now, today, at this exact moment. Look around you. Observe the people who are part of your life. Pay attention to those connections that seem to go beyond the common. Are you really honoring these relationships, or are you letting ego, pride, and earthly limitations interfere with something that may be much bigger than you imagine? And more importantly, are you allowing yourself to be found? Because sometimes we program up there a beautiful meeting, but when we come down here, we hide behind emotional walls, unresolved traumas, limiting beliefs that prevent the magic from happening. So I ask you, what are you going to do differently from now on? Will you continue living on autopilot, ignoring the signs, closing your heart for fear of getting hurt? Or will you have the courage to open yourself to the infinite possibilities the universe is trying to offer you? Because you see, everything you read here isn't just beautiful theory about spiritual planes and twin souls. It's an invitation for a real-life transformation. It's a call for you to start paying attention to details, to synchronicities, to those realistic dreams that show you paths that your conscious mind refuses to accept. How many times have you dreamed about someone you barely knew, and then that person appeared in your life in a totally unexpected way? How many times have you felt an inexplicable urge to go to a certain place and precisely there something significant happened? These aren't coincidences, they're prophecies that materialize. They re-pieces of your original planning trying to manifest, even with all the interferences of the physical world. And the question that won't go away is, are you paying attention, or are you too busy with the superficial distractions that modern society offers? Because I can guarantee you one thing: you didn't get here, didn't read all this by accident. Your soul brought you to this knowledge because there's something inside you that's asking for expansion, for understanding, for evolution. And now that you know how things really work behind the scenes of existence, you have a choice. You can pretend you didn't read it, you can return to the comfort zone of ignorance, or you can take the next step. You can start living more consciously, more attentively, more connected with your essence and with the souls who came here to walk by your side. So I'm going to ask you some very direct questions, the kind that bother but need to be asked. Are you living the life you really programmed to live, or are you just surviving on autopilot? Are you beside the right people, or are you wasting precious time with empty connections just so you won't be alone? Do you have the courage to let go of what no longer serves, even if it hurts, to make space for what really matters? Because one thing I guarantee you, as long as you re-clinging to the wrong thing out of fear of loneliness, the right thing can't arrive. It's universal law. And look, I am not saying you need to end all your relationships now and go out in desperate search of your twin soul. It's not about that. It's about you becoming a more conscious, more evolved person, more prepared to recognize and honor true connections when they appear. It's about working on your internal issues. That jealousy that consumes you, that need for control, that fear of abandonment, that difficulty trusting. Because as you saw throughout this content, even the most evolved souls up in the spiritual plane need to work on these issues. And when they come down here and don't do this internal work, what happens? Incarnational deviations, lost meetings, wasted opportunities. Do you really want to be another statistic of unrealized potential, or do you want to be that person who had the courage to look inside, do the difficult work, and transform? Because life transformation doesn't just happen by reading inspiring content or watching motivational videos. It happens when you put it into practice, when you apply it, when you truly change. So here's my challenge to you. Starting today, begin to really pay attention. Pay attention to your dreams, to your intuitions, to the people who cross your path unexpectedly. Pay attention to what your heart is trying to tell you, but that your rational mind insists on ignoring. Start asking yourself, why does this person bother me so much? Why do I feel this strong connection with someone I barely know? Why doesn't this relationship flow even though I want it to work so badly? The answers are all there, available to those who have the courage to see it, and more. Start working on yourself for real. It's no use wanting to find your twin soul if you still hostage to your own destructive patterns. It's no use wanting to live a great love if you can't even love yourself properly. The universe doesn't deliver what you want. It delivers what you're vibrating, what you're prepared to receive. So if you want deep and true connections, start being a deep and true person. If you want loyalty, be loyal. If you want unconditional love, learn to love unconditionally, starting with yourself. And look, I know it can seem scary when you stop to think about the dimension of all this. Knowing that your choices here impact not only this life, but potentially many others. Knowing that there's an entire cosmic planning happening behind the scenes. Knowing that you may be missing important connections through pure unconsciousness. But you know what's even scarier? It's reaching the end of this life and realizing that you wasted precious time on nonsense, that you ignored the signs, that you let fear drive your choices, that you didn't have the courage to dive deep into what really matters. So the final question I leave for you is, what story do you want to tell when you return to the spiritual plane? Do you want to say you tried, that you took risks, that you loved for real, that you honored your connections even when it was difficult? Or do you want to say you were afraid, that you hid, that you chose the easier and more superficial path? The choice always was and always will be yours. But now, at least you can no longer say you didn't know. You know, you have the knowledge. The question is, do you have the courage? And if you want to continue learning about this fascinating universe, if you want to dive even deeper into these mysteries of the soul, of connections, and of life beyond life, then subscribe here to the channel and activate notifications. Because this is just the beginning of a much bigger journey. There's much more knowledge waiting for you, many more revelations that will expand your consciousness and help you live a fuller, more conscious life, more connected with your true essence. Don't let this moment of awakening pass by. Take advantage of this energy, this desire for change that you're feeling now, and transform it into real action. See you in the next video, and until then, pay attention to the signs. They're everywhere, waiting for you to finally see them.